when Charlie bought a copy of The Big Issue from Phil in Exeter. It was a chance meeting that led to a life-changing day for everyone involved, less than a week later. The day before they met, Phil was forced to abandon his only possessions in a violent, drug-ridden hostel in Birmingham, 160 miles away. A few days later, Charlie and his colleague Sam picked up Phil and Jane and went on a 320-mile round trip to see if they could recover what was left of Phil's possessions. In return, Phil agreed to share his whole story on camera.
Good morning. What a weird day. In a good way, I hope. Don't know how this is going to go. I worry about that old proverb or saying or cliche. We are punished for our kindnesses. Well, no good deed goes unpunished, I think. Let's see. See you later. Find your agent, find your home. Well, hopefully you'll get one of those done today.
How are you feeling?
I'm a little bit apprehensive, actually.
It's a funny old day, this, isn't it?
That's Phil calling me. Hey, Aunt, sorry. We're just about 5 minutes away.
Okay, lovely, mate. I'm out the front.
Morning!
It says that, I'm always freezing. Really?
Right, well, road trip.
Thank you so much.
Right, let's see.
I've managed to get 250 quid towards my deposit.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic news.
5 o'clock in the
Just got to get the other 150 now and I'll be
Being a
alright.
typical boy, take...
Yeah, I used my PIP money because the council wouldn't help me. But,
Well, the reason why the council were open is because technically he had the ticket to Birmingham. And they reckon he could stay in Birmingham.
even though it's not safe for me to stay there. Really.
It's not just about safety, it's about all the other things.
It's like a friend said to me yesterday, I sold a big issue too.
The
He's like, you done the right thing really. You could have stayed there in Birmingham, but at the end of the day you would have gone down the wrong path.
They did, they said I should.
One of the things I notice most often when talking to people about the homeless is the lack of trust of their story. Well, you can't believe what they say. They're all on drugs. If people are taking drugs, they just don't tell the truth. But at the start of this day, we knew nothing about Phil. As in, we knew nothing for sure. We didn't know anything for a fact.
What I thought I would do first, so that you understand the context, we're specifically looking to find people who are either in temporary accommodation or are at risk of becoming homeless because they're in private rented and the landlord's kicking them out for some reason and they can't find somewhere new. So we're taking a new approach where, as a business, instead of spending money on advertising and instead of spending money on PR to get publicity for our property website, we're taking that money, that advertising and PR money, and instead we're using it to provide rent guarantees.
Basically, started about 7 years ago for me. I was living in London. Second worst tower block in London. It was voted.
Council flats? Or
Housing association.
housing? Okay.
I'd split up with my girlfriend and that. She had made allegations against me which were wrong. I got compensation in the end. I just walked out the door because I couldn't stand that place no more. I went to Bournemouth because my friend lived in Bournemouth. I used that compensation to secure private accommodation and basically I spent the compensation. I got on drugs at the time,
Right.
unfortunately.
Split up with my girlfriend. She made allegations against me which were wrong. Got compensation in the end. Now, at this point in the journey, he was just dropping these little tiny micro hints about really big things that had happened. I remember later in the day thinking back to this point and going, I totally missed the significance of this point he's just made.
And in the end, the rent was getting paid directly to me, and I spent the 1 month's rent money because I paid 2 months up front. So I thought I was covered, but it wasn't like that in the contract. So basically, I went home one night and all the locks were changed. So that's how I become homeless. Then I was just living on the streets in Bournemouth. I was addicted to like drugs at the time. And basically I didn't get no help because I had no local connection to Bournemouth, so the council wouldn't help me or nothing. And it just was like a never-ending story sort of thing. Wake up every day begging money to get drugs. So what I found best to do was just to move away from Bournemouth. I went to Southampton and the same old thing happened again. On the streets, no local connection, the council won't help you. Most of the homeless people I got on with, but there's always one or two you're not going to see eye to eye. The same thing happened again, so I moved to another area. And it went on for about 5 years, and then about 2 or 3 years ago I went to Exeter. I met Jane in Pet Rocks. We got on, bless her at the time, she put me up for a couple of weeks. But then I got so fed up that no one was helping me, these councils and organisations and Pet Rocks and places like that. But I just ended up climbing up scaffolding, wanting to end my life. I was admitted to a mental hospital in Taunton for a month. Basically I told them, like they said, you can't stay here no longer. We're sending you back to Bournemouth Council. We're going to write you a letter. You'll be okay. They'll house you. Even though I was telling them blatantly they're not going to house me. So they took me back to they dropped me off in Bournemouth. I went straight in the council. I knew what they was going to say, and they said exactly what I knew they was going to say. They're not going to house me, blah, blah, blah. I've got no local connection again because I've moved away from Bournemouth. You have to start all over again.
It must be, I can't imagine how demoralising it must be when you know that this is pointless, but Taunton just wants you off there. They're like, you're making someone else's problem. Even though you say to them, but I've got no connection to Bournemouth.
So then I was just homeless again for a couple more years. I come back to Exeter about...
A couple more years? Sleeping on the streets or...?
Yeah, just going from Bournemouth back to Southampton, back to all the places I knew. So, and then I come back to Exeter about 2 months ago, roughly. Bumped back into Jane. And bless her, she helped me out for a few weeks. But obviously, she'd get in trouble herself, you know, so I don't want to put her at risk. So bless her, she looked up on Google and we found the only people that were willing to take you really, because Exeter Council wouldn't help me, was Birmingham supported housing. So Jane was like, you are going to try it, Phil. So I did it, I gave it a try, but basically they just told me a packet of lies. I said I can't be in a place, shared accommodation with drug users or anything like that. And the woman on the phone was adamant, no, there won't be none of that. You'll be fine and all this lot. Basically I got the coach up to Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. Went there, went into my place. One of the blokes that was there was injecting heroin, smoking weed. He was ticking drugs off of people, youngsters, not paying them back. They were coming round, other people were letting them in. They was banging on his door at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm upstairs trying to get sleep. They was coming up to my door, knocking on my door, thinking they're my friends and that, even though I don't want nothing to do with them. They was setting light to his door.
What?
So I didn't feel safe at all.
You see, this is what I mean about how understated he is. They were setting fire to the property, so I didn't feel safe.
And it come to the point that the geezer didn't like me either for some reason. Got a knife from the kitchen, walked me out of the house, said, don't come back here. So I ended up walking the streets in Birmingham all night. And then the next day someone asked to borrow my phone. Where I'd been awake all night, I wasn't thinking straight. So I lent the man the phone, he's just run off with my phone basically. So I ended up losing my phone.
Can this much bad luck happen to one person, especially in the space of about 24 hours?
Are you now milking it, Phil? Did you give your phone to a stranger? Were you high? No, because he says he was off drugs. But he actually explains it, because he'd been walking around all night, wasn't thinking straight.
I went back to the supported accommodation place the next morning, told them like what was happening and going on, that I can't stay here. So they've offered me another place. They drove me to the other place. The man couldn't even get in the front door with the keys to start off with. So that didn't fill me with much hope, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then I went in there and it was the same sort of people. I could tell they was on drugs and everything. So I said, no, it's alright. I'd rather stay where I am. So I thought I'd give it another try. I went back to the same place.
Tell me if I've got this right. It sounds to me like once you stop using drugs, it was more important to you to stay away from drugs than it was to have a place to live, because you're trying to avoid drugs, right? Is that right? Is that why?
To a degree, yes. Basically walked out of there, left everything I'd collected over the last year and a half. TV, stereo, clothes and everything. Just left it basically and come to Exeter.
And when was that?
This would say maybe 2 months back.
That's the reason most people are homeless, because they're single, you'll find, and they've got no children. Those two things knock you out of any accommodation whatsoever.
Have you got any brothers or sisters?
3 brothers, 1 sister.
Do you keep in touch with them at all?
I was up until about a year ago when my phone got stolen and another phone got stolen of mine, and I lost all contact and I can't get back hold of them.
And do you know many people who've been long-term homeless who've managed to get out of it?
Not really. There was a person in Bournemouth, Rashid his name was. He was offered a council flat after so many years of being homeless. He took it and he was there 3 days. He couldn't handle living in a place.
Eh?
Yeah, he walked out. He preferred living on the streets. And I've met a few people like that. They just can't deal with it after being homeless for so long.
It's an amazing achievement that you just gave up drugs on your own without any help. That takes an enormous amount of strength.
I've got willpower when it comes to that sort of thing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's the situation I got into. That at one stage I had to climb up scaffolding, get admitted to a mental hospital just to get housed because I was in that desperate situation. I was on the verge of death.
So
that was my only option at the time. That's all I could think of.
when was that?
This is maybe about 3 years ago now. I was in London at the time for about a week. Didn't have no sleeping bag. All I had was a t-shirt at the time. The weather wasn't that great. I was just laying in some doorway of a BT phone place, basically freezing cold, just getting whatever I could find, pieces of cardboard to wrap over me. And it got that bad, I just thought, oh, I've got to do something, because I ain't going to survive on the streets. So I started climbing up scaffolding.
What, until someone called the police? Something?
Yeah, basically, they took me to the hospital. They wasn't going to admit me at first. They kept me there for about 6 hours. They done their assessment and they said I was fine to go. I just walked back out of the hospital and just laid in the middle of the road, and they come back out, and the next thing I was admitted to the mental hospital in Torture.
I don't know why, but this was the kind of point I started to think, I don't think he's making any of this up.
Yeah.
This was the point at which I started to think he was very precise about the doorway in the BT tower.
Mm-hmm.
There were little details like that. I had to get bits of cardboard. I only had a t-shirt at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly those little details started to make me think, this is his memory.
So how old were you when it sort of started to go wrong? You said about 7 years ago, was it?
Well, it started to go wrong before that. Once my ex started making up allegations that I beat the living daylights out of her when I never laid a finger on her. There was no evidence. The police took photographs and she didn't have one mark on her body. But because of her parents and her mental health problems, they take her side of the story, basically. So I filed for compensation because I was arrested for wrongful arrest, which took me 4.5 years to get. But in the meantime, I was put in Catford, South East London, in a tower block full of drug users. And people knocking on my door, constant noise all night. Because it was right above shops and a market. People shouting and screaming, let me in, blah, blah, blah. All sorts of stuff going on. So I never really got no sleep after that while I was there. So as soon as I got that compensation, I just literally threw the keys back through the letterbox and walked out of the place. Managed to get a place at the time, but because I didn't have no references or guarantors or nothing, I had to pay like so much money instead. Normally instead of 1 month's deposit, I had to pay like 2 months rent in advance, deposit, fees and all this stuff.
But that was when it all went wrong, really.
Well, yeah.
When she alleged,
Because I had nowhere to go, I couldn't go back to that place. There was a restraining order put on me not to go back there for 6 years, but I was in love with her, so like an idiot I went back one night, shouted through the letterbox that I loved her. The next thing the police turned up, because I broke my bail conditions, I was sent to prison for that.
oh no.
So I'd done 3 months in prison.
The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together at this point.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. He gave us the overview before, and now you hear.
And now you start to hear these little anecdotes, the missing, filling in the gaps, filling in the missing links. And you realise, well, I began to realise this is a kind, gentle man who was in love with a girl who had mental health problems. Still loved her. Enough to break his bail conditions to go around and tell her he loved her, which landed him back in prison, or landed him in prison.
Yeah.
Because you'd gone around to tell her you loved her.
Yeah. Well, it's breaking the bail conditions, you know, that's how the system is.
Yeah, over in the corner, all the Chargers, all the same cars. Actually, this camera at the back. So you haven't even got to turn around.
No, it's impossible to be drug addicts and alcoholics.
So
The combination of the both.
Like the council might say I'm being ungrateful because I was offered a place in Birmingham and such, but I walked out on my own accord.
You
But it's not
wasn't
quite as
being
simple as
ungrateful.
that, you know? When you
Either
feeling
you would have been back
threatened
on
and
drugs.
stuff, you know?
Yeah.
There was only 2 ways you would have gone in Birmingham, back on drugs
Or
or in
dead.
prison.
Right.
Or dead. 3 ways then.
So explain what just happened. What was on the phone just now?
Well, that was my
That
landlord.
was the landlord. Was just explaining that the council wouldn't help with a deposit, basically. So I've had to do it out of my own benefit money, basically.
And that's the landlord of where you.
Yeah, my landlord.
That's where you live all the time. That's your.
Yeah.
And you're staying there temporarily at the moment, or he's got a bed sit for you in the same place?
Not in the same place, in
He's not meant to be
another house,
living with me,
basically.
but he's got to be Friday because you'll lose it otherwise. Because if you lose that, you've lost everything.
There you go. And that's back on the road.
I'm sorry, Finn, if I missed the answer to this earlier. How long ago was it you left where we're going now?
Birmingham.
Yeah.
Come back last Wednesday. wasn't
Oh,
it?
okay.
Yeah.
What, the day before we met you?
Yeah.
We met you on Thursday.
Yeah,
That's good timing,
I
isn't
was
it?
only in Birmingham a week, less than a week.
Yes, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
And how many years have you two known each other?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's about 3 to 4 years now, I'd say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I only went for breakfast.
Went for breakfast and came back with a new friend.
Yes.
So it's a good day.
Always a good day. Well, there was a method to my madness. I think they were teeing a day. It was all kicking off in petrols. So I was scanning the room to be fair to look for at least one sensible person to sit next to.
Unfortunately, you found me.
It was it. Yes.
I mean, one of the things I wanted to do as much as possible was just to hear you guys talking about your reality is like.
It's all different, you know.
I know.
It's like yesterday saying the big issue. The man to me is like, you don't look very homeless. You've got brand new trainers on. I said, well, because I choose to sell the money that I make from the big issue to buy a new pair of trainers, not spend it on drugs, you know.
Did he really say that?
Yeah.
Well, somebody asked you why you've got new trainers and you're selling.
He doesn't look very homeless. He's wearing new trainers. And what's the big issue like as an organisation?
Oh, very helpful, to be honest with you. Yeah, they've got my birth certificate for me. They got me some cutlery and stuff when I was up in Birmingham selling them, or trying to sell the big issue in Birmingham, but it was really nice up there. You get the other sarcastic people, like yesterday, one of them was like, oh, I'll have a big issue off you, mate. How much? Oh, it was like £3. Yeah, oh, sorry, I've got no money. Thinking, mate, you for real, you know what I mean? Why say that to people? Just trying to wind people up or something, you know what I mean? You get them ones. There's another bloke, I don't know what it is about him, every time he walks past me he's constantly staring at me like with evil sort of eyes, like you're a bad person, you're sending a big issue, like, you know what I mean? But to me, it's just like, because that helps me with my depression, really. Instead of being stuck indoors all day between four walls, just getting out, talking to people.
Really.
You know,
If I had
it does help a lot.
First of all, got divorced.
That's good. Yeah. So the people who are rude to you, they're in the minority, are they?
Yeah, it's
So
just
mostly
the
people are nice.
minority people. You always get them ones wherever you are, basically.
Yeah.
In all walks of life. Certain people, members of the public, some are nice. Others are like, oh, do you want something to eat, mate? I'll give you a Kentucky, like a burger from Kentucky, and you'd open it up and there's no burger in it, it's just a roll. They've actually took the chicken out and ate it, you know. Well, they say, do you want this? And they give you half an apple that they've eaten. Or half a sandwich that they've bitten out of, you know. They think they're helping you, sort of thing, you know. But then other people that I met from the public have been really kind and generous, you know. One person, he put me up in a place in Southampton for the night, hotel, bought me clothes. He was actually an air ambulance pilot.
Oh, right.
But then again, it's kind of good in a way when it happens to you for the night, but then when you face the harsh reality, you wake up in the morning, you've got to leave that hotel to go back to the streets, it's pretty downing, like, I wish I'd never done it, really.
Really? Really? So if you go back, you wouldn't do it again. You wouldn't go in the hotel room again.
Oh, I would do, but I'm just saying that when you've been there for all night, you're nice and warm.
Yeah.
After you've been on the street for 6 months freezing, and then you've got to go back to the streets the next morning. It's like you just feel down again. It's like, oh, I wish I'd just stayed on the streets that night, to be honest with you. Where's the run, mate?
The baggies.
It's the stadium, man. Look.
West Bromwich Albion. You got to film
You're
this.
joking! Oh my God, it's the baggies! Oh mate! Oh, I can't get the camera on. Oh my God, there's the baggies! Oh! Oh my God! Oh, I don't believe it.
You've had a moment, haven't you?
I have had a moment. It's the baggies. That's how much I love my football.
Just on the left here, a bit further. Sort of where that silver car is, really.
Okay.
I don't know where you're going to park.
There's a gap just in front of it. I can park over this side, look.
That's my door there, that green one. Or was my door. That's my room up there. Top one. Or was my room. Ready, Jane?
Yes,
You got to help me.
ready.
Because I want to get in and out.
All right.
You do.
Yeah, we've got a few spare shopping bags if you need them. You should be careful about filming that house.
You couldn't wait to get out, could you?
Oh, let's go to. Well, you saw how he was with me.
So 8 of you, and what? There's 2 loos between 8 of you.
Oh, Phil. Oh, mate, you're going to make me cry in a minute, mate.
Oh, you set me off.